Some passages in the Bible are easy to understand right away. Others move us instantly. But there's a different category, the ones we read, reread, save to think about later, and still don't quite understand. Today's parable is one of those. It appears in chapter 16 of the Gospel of St. Luke. And if you've never heard of it, let me quickly tell you what happens, because the very beginning is already strange. A manager is caught misappropriating his master's possessions. He's about to be fired. And instead of trying to make things right, he makes one last move. He calls his master's debtors, one by one, and reduces what they owe. Whoever owed 100 barrels of olive oil now owes 50. Whoever owed 100 sacks of wheat now owes 80. He does all of this without anyone's permission, purely out of self-interest, to make sure that once he's fired, there will be people willing to help him. Up to this point, it's the obvious ending to any story about corruption. The boss finds out, the guy gets what's coming to him, and the moral of the story is clear. Except Jesus does the opposite of what we expect. He says that the master praised the manager. He praised his cleverness. And that leaves us with one simple question. Is Jesus saying that it pays to be dishonest? If you've made it this far thinking that sounds strange, relax. Nearly 2,000 years of Catholics have thought the exact same thing before you. And that's precisely the confusion we're going to clear up today. To understand this parable, you first need to understand something about how property management worked in first-century Palestine. A manager, oikonomos in Greek, wasn't just an ordinary employee. He was the person who handled everything: contracts, collections, negotiations with suppliers. He often had more direct contact with the debtors than the landowner himself. And in practice, he had considerable freedom to negotiate on his master's behalf. Much like a bank manager today has a certain amount of authority before needing approval from the board. This is important because it explains the manager's move. He wasn't inventing authority he didn't have. He was using, one last time, an authority that everyone still recognized, only now for his own benefit, not his master's. And there's another cultural detail that makes all the difference. Reducing someone's debt, in that culture, created an obligation of honor. Whoever had their debt forgiven was morally indebted to the person who forgave it. That was how people built support networks in a society without Social Security, unemployment insurance, or anything like that. So what the manager does is cold, calculated, and not noble in the slightest. He uses the last minutes of power he has to buy the goodwill of a whole group of people, knowing he'll need it. And this is precisely where we need to ask, who was Jesus talking to? The Pharisees, who were obsessed with money and attachment to possessions. Luke makes that very clear right after this passage. And the disciples, who needed to understand one thing: how to keep their feet on the ground in light of eternity. Now we come to the part that has confused everyone, even to this day. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. Notice, the text doesn't say that the master praised the fraud. It says he praised the man's cleverness. In the original Greek, the word used is phronimos, the same word that appears elsewhere in the Gospel to describe prudence, shrewdness, and the ability to act with practical intelligence in an urgent situation. It's the same word used for the wise virgins who brought extra oil. It has nothing to do with honesty. It has to do with knowing how to read the situation and act quickly before it's too late. And this is where Jesus makes the turn no one expects. The children of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. In other words, people who think only about money, career, and appearances often act with more urgency and strategy than many Christians do when it comes to their own souls. Think about how many people you know who know the due date of every bill by heart, plan their retirement 10 years in advance, have health insurance, car insurance, an emergency fund, and have never gone to confession in all those years. They've never opened the Bible on their own. They've never stopped to think about what will happen after this life is over. Jesus isn't praising the manager for being dishonest. He's holding him up as an uncomfortable mirror. If this man acted with such urgency because of a job, why do we act with such laziness when eternity is at stake? Let's be absolutely clear about what Jesus is not saying, because this parable has been misused far too many times. He is not saying that the ends justify the means. He is not giving anyone permission to cheat, evade taxes, deceive a business partner, a customer, or an employer. Nowhere in the gospel does Jesus call sin a virtue. What he is praising is urgency. Then Jesus follows up with a sentence that often gets overlooked, even though it's at the heart of everything. Make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into eternal dwellings. Unrighteous wealth here does not mean stolen money. It's a Hebrew expression for the wealth of this world. Money, material possessions, everything that is temporary by nature, even when it's earned honestly. Jesus is saying, use what you have temporarily to build something eternal. St. Augustine commented on this passage by saying, in other words, that money itself isn't the problem. The problem is living as if money were the final destination instead of a tool. St. John Chrysostom took much the same view. For him, this parable teaches that the cleverness we use in our everyday business dealings should be the same cleverness we use in matters of the soul. Yet almost no one applies that logic in reverse. And there's a verse right afterward that sums it all up. Whoever is faithful with very little is also faithful with much. It's not about having a lot or a little money. It's about what you do with what you have in your hands, whether it's minimum wage pay or an inheritance. This is where the point that changes the entire parable comes in. It isn't about money. It's about managing your life. From the very beginning of creation, God never gave the world to humanity as absolute property. He gave it as a garden to cultivate and care for. The ownership remains His. The responsibility is ours. That's the model running through the entire Bible. Managers, not owners. And you can apply it to concrete things without overcomplicating it. Time. How many hours a week do we spend scrolling through our feeds compared with the time we spend praying? No need to judge anyone. Just look at your own schedule. Family. Some people work all month to give their children a better life. And when their children grow up, they realize that what the kids really wanted was their presence, not their presence. Words. Every conversation is something we manage. We can use our tongues to draw people closer to God or to drive them away, with cruel jokes, gossip, or unnecessary criticism. Faith. Some people treat faith like fire insurance. They only remember it exists when something goes wrong. Others treat it as a daily relationship that changes their decisions, priorities, and the way they treat other people. The manager in the parable, even though he was a con man, understood something that many baptized, confirmed people who pray every Sunday still haven't understood. Time is passing, and one day we will have to give an account. And this isn't a threat. It's an invitation to stop living as if life belonged to us and start living again as people entrusted with what God has placed in our care. So, going back to the question that began this video, why did Jesus praise a dishonest man? He didn't. He praised the man's urgency, the ability to realize that time was running out and act immediately, instead of continuing to pretend that nothing was going to change. The manager only changed his attitude after hearing one sentence. You can no longer be manager. That termination notice finally woke him up. The difference between him and us is that he had some idea of how much time he had left. We don't. We don't know if we'll see next Christmas. We don't know if we'll still be here a month from now. And yet we live as if we did, putting off confession, postponing the apology we owe, delaying prayer until things calm down, while knowing deep down that life never calms down on its own. This isn't generic end-of-video talk. It's a serious question. If God called you to give an account today, what would you have to show Him? And I'm not talking only about serious sin. I'm talking about the visit your parents waited for that never happened. The talent you kept hidden out of fear or laziness. The mass you could have attended. If a dishonest manager showed that kind of urgency because of a job, what should we say about ourselves, who have received the gospel, the sacraments, the church, the Eucharist, and the promise of eternal life, and who sometimes treat all of it with less care than we give our credit card bill? The question Jesus leaves us with is not, who was that manager? It is, how have you been managing the life God entrusted to you? Your time, your family, your words, your faith. When this video ends, your routine will return. Work, school, home, the same worries. None of that will change overnight. But perhaps one thing will change. You will stop seeing yourself as the absolute owner of your life and begin to see yourself as someone who will one day meet the true Lord. And in that encounter, neither titles, nor bank accounts, nor applause will matter. Only one question. Were you faithful? May Our Lady, who faithfully managed everything God entrusted to her, and Saint Joseph, the prudent steward of the Holy Family, intercede for us, so that when the time comes to give an account, we may be found faithful.